Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer moves to kill the first impeachment article against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has the details. Delays all day today after the FAA grounded Alaska Airlines flights nationwide due to technical issues at the request of the air carrier. We'll have the story. Boeing is facing scrutiny from lawmakers as whistleblowers criticize the company's safety culture. Hear why one whistleblower says every person stepping aboard a Boeing airplane is at risk. President Biden is calling for significantly higher tariffs on Chinese metal products. Hear his speech to steelworkers in the swing state of Pennsylvania. Iran's recent attack on Israel has the world on edge as it waits for Israel's response. We speak with an expert about the Iranian military's capabilities, as well as China's possible role. Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox. The Senate right now may be moments from voting on one of the impeachment articles against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the impeachment is unconstitutional. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez brings us the latest from Capitol Hill. Luis, what can we expect to see from the Senate today?
Steph, yes, as you just mentioned, the Senate right now is an impeachment court. A little bit after 1 p.m., Senator Patty Murray was sworn in as the pro tempore president of the Senate, and then he himself swore in the 100 senators on groups of 4 to begin the impeachment trial. As soon as senators were sworn in, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer laid out the rules for the impeachment trial. He set out 60 minutes to debate the first article of impeachment, 60 minutes to debate the second article of impeachment. During the first 60 minutes, they would be allowed 7 points of order. In the second 60 minutes during the debate of the second impeachment trial, only 1 point of order. So as of right now, the debate on the first impeachment article has begun. 3 points of order have already been lodged. The first one was by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer asking to dismiss the first article, alleging it was unconstitutional. But Senator Chuck Schumer did not present any argument for this motion. Then Senator Schmidt presented a motion to move to a closed session to debate the merits on Senator Schumer's call to dismiss the first article of impeachment. That motion failed, and Senator Kennedy then raised the motion, which is being voted on as we speak, to adjourn the session until April 30th. So, Steph, we might see an end of this impeachment trial, which started less than 2 hours ago today, but it will depend on how senators vote.
And is it common to have the Senate consider dismissing an impeachment trial so quickly? Is the business as usual in the Senate?
No, Stephanie, actually, just to give some context on impeachment trials in the Senate, 22 times in U.S. history has the House of Representatives delivered impeachment articles to the Senate floor, and only on 4 occasions has the Senate not held a full trial. On 3 of those occasions, it was because the person who was impeached had either died, resigned, or was no longer in office. In the 4th case, the impeached official was a senator, and the Senate just decided that they did not have the jurisdiction to try one of their own, and instead decided to expel that senator. So if the Senate, led by Democrats, decide to dismiss articles of impeachment against Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas, they would be setting a precedent in American history. Back to you, Steph.
All right. Thank you so much for your report, Luis. And we'll have more on this on our Capitol Report at 5 p.m. Eastern, so stay tuned for that. Next up, all the planes of a major airline are back in the air after they were grounded this morning by order of the Federal Aviation Administration. Hundreds of flights across the country are still delayed, though. Alaska Airlines actually asked the FAA to issue the advisory this morning. The airline says it was having problems upgrading the system that calculates the weight and balance for its jets. Flights on Alaska Air and sister company Horizon Air were affected. Company executives say passengers may experience delays throughout the day. The grounding comes as Senate committees held dual hearings today examining allegations of major safety failures at Boeing. And Senator Richard Blumenthal says that Boeing is at a moment of reckoning. Whistleblowers assert that the aircraft company prioritizes profits over safety. This comes after the door plug blew off a Boeing plane mid-flight earlier this year and various other smaller incidents. Former employees tell lawmakers that they had numerous quality concerns, but when they tried reporting their concerns, they were ignored, demoted, or even harassed. They say Boeing sought to produce more planes more quickly without the necessary testing and inspections and then tried to cover it up. A former Boeing manager told Congress that Boeing's safety culture is dysfunctional.
Every person stepping aboard a Boeing airplane is at risk. Government authorities ignored Boeing's manufacturing problems until the Alaska accident. Passengers shouldn't have to rely on whistleblowers to provide the truth. They should be able to get on airplanes and not have to worry about what model it is. There's a reason commercial aviation has been historically safe, and that's because people worked extremely hard for decades to keep them safe. They told the truth. They admitted their mistakes, and they didn't downplay safety incidents. These agencies have become lazy, complacent, and reactive. The deterioration has been occurring over several years.
Former manager Ed Pearson says even government agencies have been doing a poor job. He says the National Transportation Safety Board, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the Department of Transportation all ignored Boeing's problems even after multiple high-profile crashes. Only when the plane door blew off earlier this year did they admit to the issues. Lawmakers are now discussing how to fix the problem without hurting the supply of planes in the air. And House Speaker Mike Johnson is moving ahead with his proposal to fund a series of foreign aid bills, but he continues to face significant pressure from congressional hardliners, even as President Biden is endorsing the bill. The packages unveiled today include money for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and other Indo-Pacific partners. The final totals are basically in line with the Senate's earlier proposal. The aid to Israel is both military and for humanitarian concerns in the region. A fourth bill is expected to include a revised TikTok ban, which passed the House but has stalled in the Senate. It's also expected to include the Repo Act that would allow the U.S. to pay for some foreign aid by seizing the assets of Russian oligarchs. In order to get bills passed, a House Speaker generally needs to work across bipartisan lines. Once Representative Mike Gallagher retires on April 19th, Republicans will only have one vote majority in the House. Joining us now to discuss the full implications of this is NTD's news contributor, Mike Leon. He's the Policy and Strategy Director of the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and host of the News Commentary podcast, Can We Please Talk? Mike, great to see you. How prepared do you think Speaker Johnson is to work with Democrats? And what might this look like, especially with the possibility of being ousted as Speaker looming over his head currently?
Steph, good to see you first and foremost, as always. Yeah, for Speaker Mike Johnson, this has just been a mess because his own conference right now, yesterday, Representative Thomas Massey said in front of the conference that he thinks the Speaker should resign and he's going to join Marjorie Taylor Greene's motion to oust Speaker Johnson, potentially if she brings it up. So, it's been an issue right now. You saw recently, I know Epic Times has just put out some articles about that there's going to be a vote on Saturday on some of the bills that you just mentioned around Ukraine funding, Israel funding, and obviously the border. And there's already been Representative Chip Roy, Representative Troy Nehls, who have both said there are going to be no votes. They don't feel that Ukraine should get any type of funding, at least to the amount that Speaker Johnson wants to give. And what Democrats truly want from this. Again, Democrats' point is that Russia's invasion of Ukraine will lead to Poland next and the Baltics and other regions, and it's imperative to give them funding to be able to protect themselves from having Putin go further west into Europe. So for Speaker Johnson right now, look, razor-thin majority. There's been resignations up and down. You just mentioned Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin. You just mentioned before, if you didn't, I'm mentioning it right now, Ken Buck retiring as well, coming up in April. this has just been a mess. And they really have nobody to point to but themselves, because they started with this majority. And now we're seeing the most conservative of folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, we haven't passed anything meaningful that conservatives, true, hardline conservatives would want. And who's the speaker behind all of this right now? It's Mike Johnson. So I don't know how he can work with Democrats. I spoke with Representative Glenn Ivey recently on our show, who's a Democrat from Maryland, said he's open. There's moderate Democrats that are willing to help the speaker pass legislation, but he's got to be willing to work with them. And Kevin McCarthy worked with them, and then the next day went on a news network and killed Democrats, which is what led to Democrats shifting their vote to oust him. So this is a mess for Speaker Johnson right now. I don't know where it goes from here, to be honest.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the resistance from the Republican side as well. Is there anything else there that you can see why he's facing that resistance and ire, really, from his side?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is the border and immigration, right? Representative Chip Roy represents Texas. He's the one been the most vocal voice right here saying that immigration, and we've seen it in polling data, it's the number one issue that folks are talking about, discussing, in addition to the economy, right? So we need to allocate resources to improving border measures. And now they want a HR 2, some type of version of that to get passed. There was the bill that obviously was introduced by Senator Langford that didn't get anywhere in the House. So they would want to disassociate the immigration funding from what the Ukraine and Israel funding is. But there's split amongst the Republican Party of how to do that. And that's the problem right now, is the vote margin, like you mentioned before, Steph. It's too thin. It's only down to one vote. So Speaker Johnson needs to reach across the aisle and work with Democrats. And right now, Democrats are not giving in. They want to focus a little bit less on immigration reform and focus more on the money to Ukraine and Israel aid.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike Leon. Always great to speak with you.
Thanks for having me, Steph.
And President Biden is calling out China as part of his campaign in the steel city of Pittsburgh. He's praising the backbone of American workers and calling for triple the tariffs on imported metal products, including steel and aluminum.
That the backbone of America has a steel spine. It really does have a steel spine. You heard me say it before. Wall Street didn't build America. Middle class didn't build America, and you guys built the middle class. Unions built it. And that's why I'm here today to announce a series of actions that I stand by you, the American steel worker. Look, first, U.S. Steel has been an iconic American company for more than a century, and it should remain a totally American company. American owned, American operated by American union steelworkers, the best in the world. And that's going to happen, I promise you.
Biden wants to raise tariffs to 25% from 7.5%. The current ones come from former President Trump. Both candidates are now trying to win votes from unions and blue-collar industries. The Biden administration says the tariffs are necessary for national security to protect a critical manufacturing sector. On top of the tariffs, it's working to prevent China from flooding the market with cheap imports or skirting tariffs by importing through Mexico. And the U.S. continues to push to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East as Israel considers its response to Iran's aerial attack several days ago. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with Brent Sadler, a senior research fellow at the Allison Center for National Security, about the Islamic nation's military capabilities.
Israel's military chief said that Israel is still considering its steps, but that the country will respond to Iran's recent missile strike. Senior research fellow at the Allison Center for National Security, Brent Sadler, says Iran's military forces have changed fairly dramatically since the last formal Department of Defense Iran power report back in 2019.
I think most importantly, their air defense systems, with the help of Russia, with systems like the S-300, S-400s, which are very capable air defense systems, but they're ballistic missiles. They do have the ability to range all of Israel and even parts of the Balkans and Eastern Europe. And it's believed that they're on track to actually be able to range all of Western Europe in the near future.
Sadler says they also have a fairly sizable ballistic cruise missile arsenal, which probably includes hypersonics. The warfare expert says the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are probably the next most important element of Iran's military, with about 125,000 troops.
That's how they control, manage, and support their proxies like Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and several groups that are in Iraq and Syria today.
As far as air capabilities go, Sadler says the Iranian Air Force flies an assortment of older aircraft, like MiG-29s from the Russians, with questionable material condition, and that they're still using aircraft they got from the United States before the 1979 revolution.
And they're flying the F-14 Tomcat, which is made famous by the first Top Gun movie in the 80s. And so they're still flying that aircraft. The U.S. has stopped flying that since the early 90s.
In its recent attack on Israel, Iran launched about 300 killer drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. About 99% of those were intercepted by air defense systems. Sadler says China, with its own ambitions to invade Taiwan, was likely watching closely. The senior research fellow says the Iranians are most likely feeding information about how the U.S. and other Western countries responded and helped shoot down their ballistic missiles.
Most importantly, because the Chinese for decades now have spent a huge amount of money and practiced the techniques, the concepts of operation to employ ballistic missile against the U.S. military, its bases in the Asia-Pacific region, the first island chain for, say, like Japan, but also against its aircraft carrier strike groups.
The warfare expert says the Chinese have a willing partner in the part of Iran to provide them all the education they would want.
They're watching to see how they can improve their own technologies as well as their own techniques and how they would employ it.
Sadler says Israel's eventual response to Iran's attack will hold valuable lessons. The warfare expert says it will be important to watch how the Iranians react. That could give the West insight into what the Chinese and perhaps the Russians might be feeding back to Iran from the battlefield right now in Ukraine. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
As former President Trump's hush money trial takes a one-day break, Trump is scheduled to meet with Polish President Andrzej Duda in New York. An anonymous source confirmed the meeting with AP. Duda was in New York for meetings at the United Nations. He has long expressed admiration for Trump and had good relations when both were president. The meeting comes as European leaders prepare for the possibility that Trump might win the November election and return to the White House. The Russia-Ukraine war is likely on the agenda. Poland is a NATO ally and shares a border with Ukraine. Duda is a staunch supporter of Ukraine and has encouraged the U.S. to provide more aid to the nation at war. Trump has spoken out against such funding, but last week he said that he may support providing aid in the form of a loan. Coming up, European Union countries are fighting inflation even as numbers move downward. NTD's France correspondent David Vives speaks with the head of Europe's central bank about potential measures to help the EU's struggling economy. Security cameras can be a great tool for protecting your home, but a potential flaw that could render them useless when you need them most. We'll cover that and more after the break.
I have never seen a production any better than this anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
I feel better about the world. I feel uplifted.
Invigorating. It was encouraging. Gave me hope.
This has just been therapy for the soul.
It's a must-see. Must-see.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Coming to Lincoln Center, NJ Pack, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford. ShenYun.com.
Hi, I'm Caleb, and this is my story. I was born with osteogenesis imperfecta, or brittle bone disease. I have broken my bones almost 200 times, and I have had 11 surgeries. But I didn't let that stop me. I love to bike ride, climb, race, and I'm learning how to stand and walk. But I can only do all of this because of generous people like you and Shriners Hospitals for Children.
Because of people like you, Shriners Hospitals for Children has helped more than 1.3 million kids just like me, regardless of their family's ability to pay.
Shriners Hospitals for Children is only able to provide this world-class, life-changing medical care because of the generous gifts of people just like you.
Because of you, I can ride my bike. I can play basketball.
Because of people like you, I can run.
I can smile.
Will you send your love to the rescue today?
When you go to loveshriners.org right now and give just 63 cents a day, you're helping kids just like me.
Like me. Like me. When you give today, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a thank you and a reminder of the love you gave to a kid just like me.
Your gift, no matter how small, can help a child today.
This is your moment to make a difference.
When you pick up your phone, you know you have it right there, and call to give. You're helping kids like me. Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, please call again or give right away at loveshriners.org.
Your gift makes a difference. Thank you for giving.
The tempting online world is encroaching on our campus. Is unplugging cables and confiscating phones the solution to protect our children? No, we just need a clean multimedia platform. Join Ganjing Campus to leverage premium channel features, professional development courses, and kindness event toolkits tailored for teachers. Build a truly positive and interactive classroom community. Foster a pure and delightful learning environment for children.
European central banks are looking to cut interest rates in June if inflation continues its downward trajectory. But despite inflation numbers slowing down, many households are still struggling with the cost of living. NTD's France correspondent David Vives speaks with a finance expert who says official data doesn't necessarily reflect the daily challenges most people face.
European Central Bank leader Christine Lagarde is considering cutting rates in the Eurozone to support an economy that's struggling to grow. Inflation appears to be easing, although Lagarde warns that the road to achieving sustained inflation of 2% will be bumpy. In the UK, the Consumer Prices Index dropped to 3.2% in March, the lowest level since September 2021, the Office for National Statistics said. However, while figures tout shifts in inflation rates, financial expert Mirette Zaki says these numbers aren't reflecting the lived experiences of people.
We have indexes that don't reflect the cost of living, and they don't even claim to reflect the cost of living.
Zaki reveals a systematic underrepresentation of key expenses that significantly impact households. For example, it doesn't take into account people's habits of buying cheaper products. Some indexes don't consider the rise in prices of real estate and health insurance. Zaki also says the numbers are purposefully downplayed because it has social implications.
The lower the inflation rate, the less need to increase wages. Because if you accept that inflation is high, wages have to adjust. So, socially speaking, companies have to spend a lot more, and they don't want that. It's not in the interest of the economy, if you want to put it like that, to have bad figures, high inflation, high unemployment, and so on.
In France, despite inflation following a decreasing trend, prices have remained high. The CEO of one of the major retail chains recently reported to Figaro Outlet a considerable decrease in volume sales in grocery stores. When a product is more than 3 or 4 euros, many people don't consider buying, he said. According to Zaki, inflation also doesn't hit the same in lower and higher salary households.
First and foremost, it's the wage earner, the small wage earner who suffers the full brunt of inflation. If I give you an average inflation rate of 2%, it means nothing, because for someone much richer, this 2% rate is much lower, perhaps 1%. For someone poorer, the rate might be 5%.
The Eurozone economy didn't grow at all in the last 3 months of last year, and the outlook for the figures from the quarter just ended isn't much better. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Next up, security cameras can be a great tool for protecting your home, but some of the wireless devices could have safety flaws. Hackers and criminals could potentially access and disable your cameras. NTD's Bill Thomas has the details.
Hardwire security camera systems for home use were standard practice for many years, but many of us have made that switch over to Wi-Fi. However, in a rapidly changing high-tech world, are these Wi-Fi systems the best bet for home security? Well, they're certainly affordable, but they could leave you in a very vulnerable position.
I have a Wi-Fi camera. It's wireless. It's a lot easier to maintain. It's less messy because you don't have to use wires. It just feels more modern. It looks good.
Yeah, it is wireless. I think it's more convenient, wireless instead of the wire.
We've all been using the convenience of Wi-Fi in our homes for a variety of reasons since the late 1990s. And now, more and more people are adding Wi-Fi security cameras to their homes for both safety and protection. Unfortunately, there's a device called a Wi-Fi jammer, and in the wrong hands, use of one of these devices can have disastrous results. According to a report by the Glendale Police Department in California, thieves are using these jammers to interfere with home security cameras and alarms, disabling those devices, which then enables thieves to commit home burglaries without being detected. In Detroit, something similar to a Wi-Fi jammer is being used, and it's called a deauthor. A deauthor essentially tricks your Wi-Fi system into disconnecting from your router, which means you won't receive electronic notifications if someone is breaking into your home. While both types of devices may be illegal in your area, they can easily be found with a simple internet search, making them accessible for anyone to purchase and use. Sales of these Wi-Fi jammers can't be stopped right now, but there are a few things you can do to better prepare yourself from these high-tech breaches, according to the Glendale Police Department. First, it's recommended that you hardwire your security system, as these Wi-Fi jammers and deauthors only work on wireless systems. If you can't immediately switch from Wi-Fi to a hardwire system, try putting your main security equipment in the center of your home, as that makes it more difficult for criminals to hack your system. Also, it's a good idea to back up your security system with multiple hard drives and think about storing all of your data on the cloud of your choice. For an extra added measure of safety, don't forget to install backup batteries to your security system to ensure more continuous operation during power outages or other disruptions. Finally, it's a good idea to keep your home well lit, keep all windows and doors locked, be cautious of impersonators, and it helps to have a good neighbor or house sitter to watch your home when you're away. Bill Thomas, NTD News, Los Angeles.
And lastly, NPR whistleblower Yuri Berliner resigns. We have more on this in the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Stephanie Cox.